Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play. And as you can tell from the video title, today I'm going to be covering Rococo. And this is actually the original 2013 version of Rococo and not the new Eagle-gryphon games reprint. This is the Pegasus Spiele version of Rococo, and we're going to go into some depth on the rules and setup here because this might help you decide whether or not you want to buy the new, fancy, and expensive version, or perhaps pick up this version on the secondary market if people are selling their copies, getting the new one. So, I'll take you through the rules for this. So Rococo is a competitive game for 2 to 5 players. It takes about 1 to 2 hours to play, and it is a Euro-style game. It's designed by Matthias Kramer, Louis Malles, and Stefan Malles. And in the game, you are a tailor in the Rococo era of France. You've been invited to participate in the organization of a party. Well, the party's being hosted by Louis XV, the King of France, but you're probably not invited by him personally to participate. More than likely, his servants have reached out to you, or his aides, and they've said, hey, you got to design all the fanciest dresses, and also you've got to express your ostentatious nature by sponsoring the decorations at the party as well. The players who produce the fanciest dresses that are worn at the party in the most striking ways and who sponsor the most decorations will earn prestige, glorious prestige, and at the end of the game, the player with the most prestige will be the winner. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at what's in the box, we're going to look at how you're going to set it up, and then we'll walk through the rules. I've also got here the jewelry box expansion for the game. This comes as standard with all the new Eagle-gryphon versions of the game, so we'll have a look at the rules for this at the end of the video as well. So if you're interested in that, all of the sections are of course detailed in the description down below, which means that you can get an understanding of the layout of the video, and it will help you find something that you might be looking for specifically. So, without further hesitation, let's open up this box and take a look at what's inside. So in this version we've got an English and a German rulebook. We've got a double-sided board, and this board has actually got just 2 sides for different player counts. So this is the 4 and 5 player side of the board. Inside the box we've got this black canvas bag which contains all these different dress tokens here, and you'll see some dresses are being worn by women and some by men, and they come in 4 different colors as well, but more on how these function later. We've got these wooden pieces as well. The grey ones represent yarn and the white ones represent lace. Here we've got a whole ton of fabric tiles. Each tile has fabrics and perhaps a second option of yarn or lace on them, but they don't all have everything. As you can see, there's a variety of different options available. Here we've got prestige tokens. These will be used to track any prestige points that are earned during the game. Here we've got money in different denominations, and this is called livre. We've got 80 of these little wooden property markers. There are 16 of each color, and there is 1 color per player. To go with the property markers, we've got these player boards, 1 for each player color. We've got 25 base employee cards. These are a deck of 5 cards that each player will start with, and the player numbers are indicated in the top right corner, as you can see. We've got 28 employee cards, and these are employees that you can hire to upgrade your starting deck of standard employees during the course of the game. We've got a Queen's Favour card, and we've got a little endgame scoring player reference card. Finally, we've got a letter, which is a first player marker. So now that we've had a chance to look at all that, let's set up the game. So the very first thing you're going to do when you're setting up the game is get out your game board and put it on the table, and you have to choose a side for a player count. So I'm going to set up a 3-player game today. So I'm going to put my board on the 2 and 3 player side. Here you can see the numbers indicating it's the 2 and 3 player board, and here's the 4 and 5 players on the other side. The other side of the board just has expanded spaces for players playing out the pieces in the game. So we're just going to take the Queen's Favour card next and put it in the Queen's Favour slot. Queen's Favour slot is here at the top of the board, and we'll just put the card down there in the corner like that. So now what we're going to do is build our employee stack. So here we've got all of the different employees that are available for purchase during the course of the game, and it's very important to note that they've all got little numbers up here in the top corner. And these are sort of an indicator of their power and strength. So what we need to do is set up the deck so that these numbers are in ascending order from top to bottom. So as you can see, I've already got them put out by number. Now there should be 6 number 1s and 4 of each of the other numbers in the game. And so we're going to start with our 6s. We're going to give them a shuffle, and then we're going to put them on the bottom of the employee stack. And then we'll do the same with the 5s, shuffling them and putting them on top, and then the 4s, the 3s, the 2s, and finally the 1s. And we'll just put it out here next to the available employee marketplace section of the game board. And then we've got the resource tiles to do. So we're just going to shuffle up the resource tiles and make sure that they're all face down. And then we're going to put them in a big stack next to the resource marketplace section of the board. There we go, I've done it. So this is the cloth bag that we have filled full of the dress tiles. Just take this, give it a little shuffle around, and put it somewhere nearby within reach of players as well. So now each player is going to pick one of the player boards with the colors on them, and you can of course decide how you're going to choose colors by any means that you want. Let's play this game with blue, green, and red. Now what you can see here is I've given each player their property markers, and each player has 16 of them, but it should be noted that property markers are not a limited game component. Therefore, if one of the players actually runs out and needs to take more, they could take them from the unused property markers in the box. Or they can just use any other suitable alternative. So now each player has been given their player board, their property markers, and their set of 5 employee cards with their player colors in the top corner. Each player should take their employee deck here and just put it face down into the employee supply section of their player board, which is indicated here. There's no need to shuffle these cards because we do not draw at random from these decks. Now we'll put out the yarn and lace, the livre money, and the prestige markers somewhere where each player can reach them all. Then we're going to take 15 livre, a yarn, and a lace, and we're going to give one set to each player. So the very last thing to do on setup is to take the first player marker and give it to one of the players in the game, and then you're ready to begin. There is of course the endgame scoring reference card as well. You can put that out on the table and make sure that's somewhere where all the players can see it as well. So let's move on to talking about the gameplay in Rococo. So we're trying to impress King Louis XV, and the way we're going to do that is by accruing prestige points. The player with the most prestige points at the end of the game is the winner. Prestige points are earned by the guests at the party wearing your dresses to the party, and they're also earned through funding decorations at the party. There are many other ways to earn prestige points as well. Whenever you see this fleur-de-lis symbol here, which is all over the board, that means this thing is worth points. So there are all these different decorations that you can fund all over the board, and often by funding a decoration you will actually unlock a way of scoring endgame points as well. And we'll look at all of that over the course of this video. You can also earn prestige points by having the most guests wearing your dresses in each of the 5 different rooms in the castle on the game board. So we'll do a full rundown on how all of that works in the endgame scoring section at the end of this gameplay. So you have 7 rounds to complete as many of these things as you possibly can. At the end of the 7th round, the game will end and final scoring will take place. Each round is divided into 4 phases. The first phase is prepare for the new round, which is largely sort of board admin, refilling marketplaces and things like that. The second phase is called select 3 cards, and what you're going to be doing is going through your employee decks and picking out which 3 employees you're going to use this round. And this is a very important consideration, although it's fairly quick. And this is a very important consideration because these employees will influence the actions you're going to take and any bonus actions you might get this round. The third phase is take actions, and this is the longest phase of the round and where most of the gameplay takes place. In the take actions phase, play will go around in clockwise order from the starting player, with players playing a card from their hand, which will allow them to take up to 2 actions. A main action and potentially a bonus action, although not all cards have bonus actions available on them. After that, it's collect income, where you'll get a certain amount of money, and then it's time for the next round or the final scoring, depending on which round you're in. So we're going to start with prepare for the new round, and we're going to start with that because we need to put stuff out on the board. We're going to skip over select 3 cards straight to take actions. I'll run you through how all of that works, and then we'll look at income because it's very quick, and then we'll look at select 3 cards. Because once you understand how the take actions works, you'll then understand why selecting 3 cards is difficult and important. But we're going to start with prepare for the new round, which is very simple, a bunch of board admin. The first thing that happens in prepare for a new round is that the starting player might change. This is the Queen's Favour card here. You can acquire it in the take actions phase, and if you have it, then you become the new starting player and return the card to the board area. However, if nobody has it, or the player who is already the starting player bought the card, then the starting player remains the same. The next thing we're going to do is deal out new employee cards. If there were any employee cards here, perhaps left over from a previous round, you would remove them. They're out of the game. And then we set out 4 new ones. You always put out 4 new cards, removing any that are left over from previous rounds. As this is the first round that I'm setting up here, we put out 4 new cards from the top of the deck. There are exactly the right number of cards so that at the beginning of round 7, you'll put out the last 4 cards in this deck, meaning that this deck is essentially a round timer. Now that we've done that, we're going to populate this marketplace with resource tiles. If there were any resource tiles left over from a previous round, for example, dotted around the marketplace here like this, these would be left in place and we would only fill the empty spaces. As this is, of course, the first round, that means that the marketplace was empty, so I'm just going to populate all of these squares. Next, we're going to fill up the windows here with dresses. Now, again, what you might have is some dresses left over from a previous round, so it might start by looking a bit like this. Let me show you. So our windows might start looking a bit like this. So you'll notice that the dresses are double-sided. There is a draft side and a rental side. When you put them in the windows, you always put them on the draft side. Now, there might be some dresses left over from a previous round. Any dresses in these 2 dark windows on the end of the board here are removed from the board and discarded back to the game box. You can see there are these little arrows here to indicate that these dresses will fall off. The remaining dresses drop down to the empty rightmost positions like this. And then we go into the cloth bag to repopulate the leftmost positions. There we go. A full selection of dresses available to make. And with that, we're now ready to begin the new round, and we would move on to select 3 cards. But we're going to jump straight to take actions, which is phase 3. So the take actions phase starts with the player with the starting player token, and they will play one of the 3 cards they selected in the previous phase. Upon playing the card, they'll get up to 2 actions. They'll definitely have a main action that they can choose to do, and they may have a bonus action depending on the card as well. All of the players will play out all of the cards available to them, and when each player has played all of the cards in their hand, the phase will end, and we'll move into the next phase, income. All of the actions available to you in the game are shown here on your player board. This first one is called Claim a Queen. This next one is called Acquire Resources. This one with the scissors is Make a Dress. This one here with the shaking hands is Hire a New Employee. This one here with the carriage is Depute an Employee. And finally, this one here with the disc moving on to this little decorative circle here is fund a decoration. These two symbols on the end here are a reminder for how the income phase works. And we'll look at those in more detail when we get to the income phase. Now, there's an important thing to note here as well. Some of these actions have little thimbles with X's on them next to the action. In each deck of employees, you have three kinds of employees. You have the apprentice, who is indicated by this dark metallic border and this dark thimble in the middle of the card, which Chris calls pewter. Here on the journeyman card, you've got a silver thimble and a silver metallic border. And here on the master card, you've got a gold border and golden thimble. This is important because only certain levels of characters can do certain actions. This symbol here means that an apprentice cannot claim the queen card. Here it means an apprentice cannot make a dress, and over here this indicates that neither an apprentice nor journeyman can hire a new employee. Only a master can do that. Based on the cards you picked in the last phase, you may be limited in the actions you can take this round, so think carefully. When a player has finished playing one of the cards from their hand, they'll just put it face up into their discard pile here. And once they've gone through all of their cards, then they're out of the round. And once all players have gone through all their cards, the round will end. So the very first thing we're going to do actually is just take a look at the 5 employees that come in your main deck. If you understand how these employees work, then you'll probably understand how these fancier employees that you can hire work. So as you can see, the employees all have a symbol in the box below them, as well as a type. So here we've got an apprentice, and this apprentice allows you to take a bonus action, which is depicted here in the box at the bottom. And what this scroll means is that this is an action. As you can see, the scrolls are all used to indicate the different actions here on your player board as well. And so this employee, when you play him, you may do a main action, which can be any of the main actions from the player board that are available to the apprentice. So in this case, he can gain resources, you can depute him, or he can fund a decoration. After that, he can then go and get resources as well. So he could take resources twice, or he could fund a decoration and take resources. It's entirely up to you. But you must do a main action first, and then the bonus action second. Here's a journeyman, so he can do everything except hiring new employees, and after you've done a main action, you may spend a coin to gain a yarn or a lace. And this is important to note. Whenever you see this money symbol here, that's referring to the lever in the game, and the number in the center will be black, which means that you need to spend money, or white, which means you will gain money. The second apprentice in your starter deck allows you to gain 2 coins as a bonus action. So you'll take, again, one of those main actions, and then take 2 money from the bank and add it to your personal supply. In your starter deck, you have 2 masters as well. They don't have any bonus actions, so when you play them, you only get a main action. So the first action we're going to look at is claim a queen. And when you claim a queen, you've got to play a journeyman or a master in order to do it. And you get to take this card here from the top of the game board. The queen card immediately allows you to get 5 coins, so you can take that from the supply and add it to your personal supply. Additionally, you will get to become the starting player for the next round. If this is the final round, the 7th round of the game, instead of becoming the starting player, she'll be worth 3 victory points at the end of the game. So remember, the crown is endgame scoring, and the fleur-de-lis is victory points. The second action you can take in the game is acquire resources. So here's the acquire resources section of the board here, which you can tell from the scroll indicating the action. And we've got 3 different marketplaces here, each with 3 different fabrics inside. You can choose any of these tiles that you want, and when you pick a tile, you will either keep it for the fabric on the tile, or you can choose to have the bottom part. In this case, you would gain a yarn and a lace. In this case, it would be 2 laces, and in this case, you could choose either a yarn or a lace. If you do decide to take the bottom part of the tile, then just take the wooden cubes from the supply that correspond to what you're getting, return the tile to the game box, it won't be used again this game, and take these and put them in your personal supply. But if you keep the tile for the fabric, put it face down in your play area. Your resources are always kept secret, but players may ask how many resource tiles you have. If you take the first tile from a set, you must pay 2 coins in order to take it. If you take the second tile that's been removed from a set, it's only 1. And if you take the last tile in the set, then you can take it for free. If the entire collection is exhausted during a single phase, then you cannot buy any more of these tiles until the next round. It should be noted as well, as you can see here, yellow and green are actually equally common colors of fabric. Red is slightly rarer than those, and blue is quite rare indeed. If our player decides to buy this resource here, they'll have to pay 2 coins for it, and then if they decide to keep it for the fabric, they'll just put it over here face down in their play area. And the other players must remember that the blue player has a blue cloth. And the other players have to remember that the blue player has a blue fabric. So the next action we're going to look at is make a dress. So there are a few important things to consider when making a dress. The action is indicated up here inside the scroll to remind you that this marketplace refers to this action. And you've got the symbol crossed off here to remind you that apprentices cannot take this action. When you want to make a dress, you must first choose which dress you want to make. And there are a few important things to consider when choosing. For a start, you'll have to pay the price above the dress. So these ones can be crafted for free, and this one's going to cost 8 livres. Furthermore, any dress with this symbol on it means that it can only be crafted by a master. So journeymen can make the dresses without the symbol, and masters can make those too, but only masters can make these ones with the golden symbol on them. Then you must simply pay the cost of the dress, which is indicated here in the middle. So this one, which must be made by master, would cost 3 yellow fabrics and 1 lace. Players must provide tiles with those fabrics on them, as well as the wooden cubes indicating the lace or yarn. So if our blue player played 2 yellow fabric tiles like this and this lace, they could play this dress, and they must pay 3 livres to the bank, and these 2 tiles are returned to the game box. Note that there's no change given, the excess fabric is lost. Blue player has a choice of 2 things they can do with this dress. They can either sell it or rent it. If they sell it, they'll get the money indicated here on the dress tile, and then the tile will be returned to the game box and have no further influence over this game. If they choose to rent it, they're going to get the points here on the right side at the end of the game. We'll flip the tile over like this, and the points are indicated here for calculations at the end of the game. Then you'll take the dress and put it into the play area. So if you remember, we've got 5 rooms in the castle here, and each room has different spaces for dresses in it. As you can see, the dresses are placed in these spaces here in the rooms. Now there are a lot of important symbols here indicating differences in these spaces, but the first thing to note is about controlling the room. During endgame scoring, which is indicated by this crown, the player who controls the most dresses in this room will gain 4 prestige points, and the player with the second most dresses in the room will gain 1 prestige point. Note that in a 2-player game, the secondary score is not awarded, so it's only about first place. As you can see, every room has a majority space, and they're all worth different points, so this is important to consider as you move through the game. When the blue player places this dress in this room, they can take any of the silver spaces. If they want to take a gold space, then the dress must have been crafted by a master. Now we know this dress had to be made by a master because of this gold symbol on the other side. But remember, masters can also make dresses without that symbol, so if a master has made the dress, it may be placed in one of the gold spaces. However, if a journeyman made the dress, then it can only go in one of the grey spaces. And once the space has been chosen, you can put your player disc on it to indicate that you made the dress. Now this is important because if another player comes in here, and at the end of the game you have the same number of dresses, the tiebreaker for prestige points is based first on who has the most dresses in these master spots. So in this case, blue would win because their dress is in a master spot and red's is not. If red had 2 dresses in there, then red would win. But if both players are completely tied, they have the same number of dresses and they've got the same number of dresses in master spots, then the secondary tiebreaker is this musician. You see, you can fund this musician, and more about that when we get to funding a decoration, but whoever has their piece down here will be the second tiebreaker. So in this case, red has won. So in this case, red has broken the tie by controlling the musician. Some spaces also have rewards on them. So if you put a dress down in a space with a reward, you immediately gain the reward on the space. So in this case, the blue player could immediately take one of the resource tiles from the market, and they wouldn't have to pay for it, even if it was the first one in a set. If they went down here, they would immediately gain one lace cube. And if they went down here, they would immediately gain 4 coins. As you can see up here as well, we've got a special little space up here. And this is kind of its own unique thing. This is called the All Halls bonus. And you've got this gray symbol here indicating dress spaces, and this little symbol here indicating musicians. What this is saying is that once you've gained presence in all 5 of the rooms in the castle, you can have some bonus points. So you can have a combination of dresses and or musicians in each of the 5 rooms. Of course, the minute you do it, you can claim the spot and get the points, which will be awarded at the end of the game. So as you can see here on the main game board, I've laid it out so that the blue player now qualifies as having presence in each of the 5 rooms. Therefore, they could take most valuable available space here on the All Halls area. So now that we've resolved make a dress, we're going to move on to hire a new employee. The first thing to note about the hire a new employee action is that it can only be performed by a master. The journeyman and the apprentice are not allowed to hire for the company. So you can see here we've got the hire an employee scroll up here to indicate this is the area for this action, and the 2 thimbles here to indicate that journeymen and apprentices cannot perform this action. Then we've got the 4-card marketplace here, and these indicate the cost of the cards. If you're the first one to take a card, then you must pay 5 livres for it. If there's only 3 cards left, then the card costs 3 livres, and if you're choosing from just 2 left, then you pay 1. And if you're taking the last card in the set, then you pay nothing, and you get it for free. When you gain a new employee, you immediately add it to your hand, which means you're actually going to be able to play an extra card this round. All of the employees function the same way as the starting employees in that when you play them, they get to do a main action, and as you can see, all of these ones have bonus actions on them. And there's a mixture here of journeymen and apprentices and a master as well. But the most important thing to remember about this is that when you hire the employee, the card goes straight into your hand and you'll be able to play it this round. The next section we're going to talk about is Depute an employee. There is no area of the board for Depute an employee, but we are reminded it's available by this scroll with the horse and carriage on it. And if we reference one of the cards in our deck, we'll see that the horse and carriage appears at the bottom of the card. So if you're wondering what this was all about, this is about deputing. So deputing is when you send the employee to go and work for the king, I guess, or something like that. When you send the employee off, you will be paid money based on the value of the employee. So an apprentice is worth 4 coins. So to depute the employee, we remove the card from the game and put it back in the game box, and then gain the money in the carriage. So 4 for the apprentice. And they are gone forever now. The journeyman is worth 7, and the master is worth 10. These values are the same for each rank throughout the game. So it doesn't really matter whether it's the starting master or a master you bought later, they're always going to be worth 10. Deputing is a really useful way to get money, and it's also a really useful way of getting some crap cards out of your deck. So the very last thing we're going to talk about for taking actions is fund a decoration, and this is a bit more complex. You'll see on the board all of these fund a decoration spots, which are available, and they're always indicated by a monetary value and a silver border. So here you can see, for example, the 20 livre cost fund a decoration, which is also indicated by this silver thistle border. And we can see some more over here and over here as well. So there are in fact 4 different kinds of decorations for you to fund here on the board. There are the statues here, the fountain here, the musicians, 1 per room in the castle, and the fireworks along the top. So we'll start by having a look at the fountain, because that's really quite important. When you fund a decoration, you take the fund a decoration action, which can be taken by any of your employees. And what you're going to do is you're going to pay the value here and take one of your discs and put it down. For the fountain, there are 2 rows, the top row and the bottom row, and each correlates to these symbols over here. And these correlate to income, which is why there's a little hand holding money. So the top row is going to increase your income based on the amount of decorations you've funded. And the bottom row will increase your income based on the number of dresses that you've made. And each will put up your income by 1 per decoration and 1 per dress. If you want to fund this particular decoration, you would always go into the leftmost spot because they're the cheapest. And so the next player would have to take the spot on the right if they wanted that row. This also means that in a 3-player game, for example, there may not be enough spaces for players to get both, or if they're really not careful, they may not even get one of these. This is really important because income is really important, and having one of these to increase your income, at least one of these, is quite powerful. Although, that doesn't mean you need to do it in order to win. It should be noted that a player cannot buy both spaces in a single row. So the red player would not be able to do this, that would be illegal. So in addition to increasing your income substantially throughout the game, funding this decoration is worth 1 point at the end of the game as well. So here the red player has 2, and the green and blue player both have 1 point each. So now we'll look at the statues. The statues are essentially playing a set collection game, which is endgame scoring for dresses that you've made. If you fund one of the statues, you will get 1 point for doing that anyway. In addition, for every complete set of dresses that you've made and placed into the castle, you'll get 2 points per dress. So in this case, the red player would get 8 points. If they'd missed off the green dress, they'd still get 6 points. And this only allows you to complete one set though. For example, 2 red dresses, they would not score 2 points for each. This would still be worth 6 points. But if the red player funded a second statue, which is allowed, they would earn the right to make another set of dresses. So in this case, they could score one set as the blue, yellow, and red for 6 points, and a second set as just the red dress for 2 points. They could fund the final statue here on this side of the board, and then they could make up to 3 sets as well. So we already talked a bit about the musicians when we were talking about how the control of the rooms work for endgame scoring. But the musicians are also worth points based on the size and importance of the room. So you can see this cellist down here is worth 3 points, the singer here is worth 4, and the flautist up here is worth 2 points as well. So if you want to fund one of these musicians, you just pay the money, take a disc, put it down here, and it's worth endgame points in addition to being the second tiebreaker for room dominance. The last thing to talk about for decorations are the fireworks along the top of the board here, which are quite important. Funding a firework will earn you the right to do something special at the end of the game. But additionally, there's also here a dominance check for the fireworks too. So whoever has funded the most firework spaces at the end of the game will get 6 bonus points. And the second runner-up will get 2 points. Most of the fireworks have this ×2 multiplier on them, but the top space here has this ×3 multiplier, and as you can see, the fireworks escalate in cost. So if you want the ×3 multiplier, you must buy this space, but if you're happy with the ×2, you'd probably start here on the cheapest leftmost space. So these are endgame scoring multipliers. So this is what an endgame scoring situation may look like. Now we're going to score dominance for the fireworks, and 6 points to the red player. So the blue player is going to get the 2 points because they've got a more expensive space. In any case, once we've scored dominance for the top room of the castle, everyone's going to abandon the king, and they're actually going to move upstairs to look at the fireworks. And the way this works is that you are going to multiply the value of the dresses by the multiplier on the space. So in this case, the blue player is going to move their blue dress here to the blue space. So instead of being worth 4 points in the end, this dress is actually going to be worth 8 because there's a ×2 multiplier. And the red player's got a 3 value and 2 value dress, so they're going to move the 2 up to the ×2 multiplier and the 3 up to the ×3 multiplier. Finally, the green player's dress will move up to their space here. And obviously you can only occupy spaces that you funded that you control. So if you didn't get a space, then you can't move any of your dresses up, and they'll just stay here, and they'll just stay here on the top floor. So that's how the fireworks work. They're dress value multipliers. So now we've talked about all the actions available in the game. We're going to move on to income phase, which is the final phase in a game round. So in the income phase, everyone gets 5 income by default. So we looked at the fountain and how it worked in the actions phase, but here's a little reminder for your income phase. Everybody gets 5 coins no matter what, and you also get extras for the fountain. So in this particular instance, we can see that both of the players have achieved both of these scores here. The green player actually has nothing, so the green player is going to get 5 coins and be happy with it. The blue player is going to get 5 coins plus 1 for each decoration they funded and 1 for each dress. Well, as we can see, the blue player has no dresses, but they have funded 2 decorations, which happen to be the 2 elements of the fountain. So they're going to get a total of 7 coins in this income phase. The red player has also funded 2 parts of the fountain and both decorations and dresses. So they'll get 2 coins for funding these 2 decorations here. And additionally, they'll get 2 coins for making these 2 dresses, which means that they're going to get a grand total of 9 in this income phase. And so that's how income works. You'll just take the money and put it into your personal supply. And so then you'll move into the prepare for a new round phase, which is the first phase of the round, and proceed with the next round, or if that was the 7th round, move on to final scoring. Now let's talk about the final phase, the one we haven't talked about, which is select 3 cards. So in the select 3 cards phase, you're going to select 3 cards from your employee supply, and they'll be the 3 cards that you'll have when you go into the take an action phase. So your deck collectively refers to any cards here in your employee supply, any cards here in your discard, as well as any cards in your hand. So if you're able to remove a card from your deck, you could remove it from any of these 3 locations. But if something refers specifically to your employee supply, they're talking about the face down cards here. Now in the first select 3 cards phase of the game, you will have the 5 starting cards to choose from. And what you should be doing is thinking about what you want to do in the take actions phase and selecting cards appropriately. The point is that you always get to pick up the entire employee supply and pick 3 cards from that supply. So for our first round, we might pick this employee here, the apprentice, because he gets us some cloth. We might take the master because we might want to hire another employee. And maybe we take this journeyman as well because he helps us out in other ways. Once we've taken those 3, we put these 2 back into our employee supply. Of course, there might be more here based on how many cards we have available in the game. But once we go through the take actions phase, we're going to be discarding these cards one at a time into our discard pile here. And maybe we also bought a new employee as well this round who will go into our discard as well. When we come back around to the select 3 cards phase in round 2, we'll immediately add these 2 cards to our hand of 3 because they are the only ones left in the employee supply. So we must choose as many of the 3 cards as we can from the available cards in the employee supply. So these 2 go to our hand. Then we're going to take our discard pile because we need another card here. We've only got 2, and our employee supply is empty. We're going to take these cards here. We're going to give them a shuffle. We're going to take the whole discard pile and just put it face down here into the employee supply. Then we'll pick one of these cards to have. Maybe we take the new apprentice we just hired, and we'll put these 3 face down here in the employee supply. And they're actually going to be our 3 cards that we have in round 3 because we're going to take the 3 cards we just had, we're going to play them over the course of the take actions phase. We might buy another employee in that phase. But the next time, in round 3, we come around to doing this, we'll actually have to have these 3. And because we take these 3 for our round 3 cards, this discard pile won't reset, so we're actually going to get all of our options back again in round 4. Don't worry if that seemed a little complicated. It's really not that bad. And it's very easy to get the hang of once you start playing the game. Just make sure to use these spaces on your player board. They're really useful for helping you track just what's going on. And so I would just caution you as well, when you're selecting your 3 cards, keep in mind the apprentice, journeyman, and master levels, and remember that certain ones cannot do certain actions. And with that, we're ready to move into the final scoring. In the final scoring, we're going to find out who's won the game. What we've got here is this very handy little final scoring card. So the first thing you're going to do in final scoring is every player is going to earn 1 point for every 10 money that they have. Now remember, the game actually ends with an income phase as well, so everyone will have a chance to gain income again. The game will actually end with an income phase, so everyone will have a chance to gain income again before we go into final scoring and earn some points. When you're scoring up someone's final monies, leave them with the excess. So in this case, this player would have 2 points added to their score, but they'd hang on to their remaining 5 because this is the tiebreaker. Any leftover money after the money's been scored is the tiebreaker for the game, so that's really important. As you've scored money, you score cards. So you will, of course, score 3 points if you took the queen in the final round of the game, but there's also these employees with orange bases. So when these cards come out, 6 cards, you will actually find some apprentices here with orange boxes at the bottom. And these are actually endgame scoring conditions. They're not bonus actions. So this employee is saying for every 2 dresses you have in master slots, gain 3 points. And it should be noted that these master slots do not need to be in the same room, so you could have dresses across rooms, but for every set of 2 you have, gain 3 points at the end of the game. This one says for every pair of male coats and female dresses, collectively called dresses in the game, you'll get 2 points. So a set like this would be worth 2 points. This one says at the end of the game, for every set of leftover yarn and lace you have, 3 points. So one set like this is worth 3 points. And this one will reward you for the number of cards in your deck. So if you have 5 or 6 cards in your deck at the end of the game, you'll get 2 points, and 11 or more, you'll get 11 points. So once you've scored all of those up, then we're going to move into the on-board scoring, which are these 5 different areas here. So there's a few things to note here. The first thing we're going to note is the dominance for rooms. So we talked about this earlier in the action sections when we were looking at make a dress action, but let's look at an example now. So guys, in order to better illustrate part 3 of the endgame scoring, I have set out a bunch of dresses and little tokens here on the board. So what we're going to do now is go through and score this board. So we're going to assume here that we've already scored 1 and 2, and we're moving straight to 3, and the first thing that you score is dominance in areas. So this includes the fireworks, so we'll start up there at the top of the board. As you can see, there are 3 tokens out. Green has the rightmost token, which means green scores 6 points. Next, it's red, and they score 2 points, and that's because each player has 1 token. In this example here, red would score the 6 and green the 2. But green scores 6. Then we're going to go down here for this room here. As you can see, there are 2 dresses for each player. Green and blue are both tied for dresses because they've both got 1 in the master slot and 2 dresses. But blue has the musician, so blue is going to score the 6 points, and the 2 points goes to green, who breaks the tie with red by having a master slot. Then we are going to move on to this room here, which is won by green for having a master slot, and blue gets 1 point. This room over here, red wins for having 2 dresses, 3 points to red, 1 point to green. Then down here, this room in the middle here, this is won by green because green has 2 dresses, as does blue, but green has a master slot and the musician doesn't come into it. And blue gets 2 points because they've got more dresses than red. So the final room in the bottom here, again, 4 points to green for having 2 dresses, master slot, and musician. Red has 2 dresses as well, 1 master slot. So the tiebreaker is the musician. Red comes second, gets a point. Now that we've sorted out dominance, we can go and enjoy the fireworks. So green is going to move up their most valuable dress, which is this 4-point yellow dress here. Red will move up their most valuable dress. They're all worth 2. And finally blue, who's also got just 2-point dresses here. So 4 points for blue, 4 points for red, and 12 points for green, which is the highest scoring thing I think you can get up here. So that's excellent. And then we're going to look at the statue here. So the statue, as you can see, each player has managed to score 1 statue, which means each player can complete 1 set. Each player has managed to do a full set, with the exception of the blue player who hasn't got a blue dress. Everyone else has managed to get full set. So they're going to score 8 points and 6 points respectively. And now we're going to move into this final one, where what we're going to do is we're just going to pick up the discs and score as we go. So I'll show you one example color. So we'll do reds so that you understand how it works. So red is going to get 6 points for this disc here. They're going to get 4 points up here because it's going to be 2 for the dress times 2 here. They'll get 4 here, so that's going to put them on to 14. Another 3 here, which brings them up to 17. We've got another 3 here, which brings them up to 20, 22, 24, 25. We've already scored the set. And 1 here, which puts them on 26 points. Oh, and 1 up here that I missed, 28. So now that we've removed all of their property markers, we've got 28 that will add to their score that they've got already, and then we know red's total score. We'll do that for all 3 players. Just don't forget to add up any of these points that any players have collected during the course of the game as well. And the thing about these points as well is that they're pretty much only got for certain cards that are played. For example, this master here. This master says that when you, as a bonus action, you can pay 3 coins for a point. And you would mark that you've done that by taking one of these tokens here. And when you take these tokens, you can actually keep them hidden so people don't know how many points you have. And then we can sum up the scores to see who the winner is. And of course, ties are broken by that leftover livre. And if there's still a tie after that, then players celebrate their shared victory. So I hope that that's given you some insight into how the game works, and will help you decide whether this is something that you want to acquire for yourself. But if you'd like to see it in action, I'll be joined tomorrow by Chris and Michael, and we'll be playing through a game of Rococo with Jewelry Box expansion. Speaking of which, if you want to see how the Jewelry Box expansion works, stick around, because I'll cover that now. So it's time to talk about the Jewelry Box expansion. So the Jewelry Box expansion adds 3 things that change the game up a bit. You've got jewelry here that you can rent out to people, and we'll look at how that works. You've got these specialized apprentices here that you can hire, who give you lots of points. And you've got these upgrade tracks that allow you to upgrade your employees to new, better versions of themselves. So let's look at how to set it up. The first thing we're going to do is take this jewelry board here, and we're going to put it next to the windows on the main board. So we're going to take the board here, and we're going to put it down there like that. And next we're going to take all of these jewelry tiles here, and we're going to shuffle them face down next to this board. Now, before we've built the employee deck at the start of the game, we've got 2 new sets of level 5 and level 2 cards that come with the jewelry box, which we can tell because these little numbers are just different colors than the ones from the base set. So these are actually going to be used for something a bit different. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the 2 masters from the level 5 set here, leaving the apprentice and journeyman behind. We're going to put them in with the masters from jewelry box. We're going to give these a big shuffle. And then we're going to deal 2 random cards back into this level 5 set, so we don't know which ones are in there. We're going to take these masters and put them to one side, and then we're going to do the same with the level 2 journeyman. So we're going to take these 2 out, give this a big old shuffle, and deal 2 random level 2 cards into this set here. So you don't know what's in there. And then we're going to take this stack of journeymen and put them to one side. And then we can build our deck as normal. So the level 6 cards on the bottom, the level 5s, level 4s, the level 3s, the level 2s, and the level 1s. And make sure you give those a shuffle as you go on each side, just like we did when we set up the main game. And then your employee deck is prepared. Next, we're going to take these specialized apprentices, which are special apprentices with a gray side here and a 3-point side on the other side. Give those a shuffle and just deal 1 to each of the 3 players in the game. Note that these specialized apprentices are not put into your starting deck. They're held separately in your player area. The remaining specialized apprentices can go back to the game box because we won't be using them in this game. Finally, we've got these 5 examination cards here, and you can see there's 1 per player color, indicated by these little jewels here. So give each player their pertinent examination card. And the rest can go back in the box. So we'll take that deck of leftover master cards here, and we're just going to, without looking at it, put it here above the jewelry box board. And we'll do the same with the journeyman cards, putting them down here like this. They'll come into play later on. So now jewelry box is all set up, and what we're going to do is look at how it changes the game. So the first thing jewelry box is going to change is part of the prepare for the new round phase, the first phase of the round. So if you remember, in the previous game, what we did was we repopulated all of these different board sections, we put out new cards and things like that, and with the jewelry box expansion, in addition to doing all the things you normally do, you're also going to do a marketplace populate here on the jewelry box board. This is just like the dresses, so let's take a look. So if this is the first round of the game, there won't be any jewelry out, so we're just going to flip over 4 jewelry tiles and put them into the spaces here on the board. Now in a later phase, you might find one or more of the pieces of jewelry has been bought and is missing. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop off the rightmost piece as per the arrow here indicating that that goes. So this one will go away and be discarded back to the game box. And then we'll just drop everything down to the right as far as it will go and populate the leftmost spaces with new jewelries. Okay, so that's the only change to the prepare for the next round phase. The rest of the changes come in the take an action phase, phase 3. So we're going to look at the 3 changes. There are changes to make a dress, hire an employee, and fund a decoration. And we're going to start by looking at the changes to fund a decoration. So with the jewelry box expansion, in addition to being able to fund all the decorations on the main board, there's a new decoration to fund over here. Interestingly, this decoration isn't actually a decoration at all. What you're doing is you're sponsoring a jeweler, and they're worth either 1 or 2 points in the end game as well. So when you fund a jeweler, you put out your token on the one you want to fund, so you pay 6 livre to go down here, or maybe 10 livre to go up here, if you are the first one. And so it's important to fund a jeweler if you want to do anything with the bottom half of this board, which is make a dress section. And that's all indicated here how that works. And note this little symbol here, which means you can only fund one jeweler. So once you've funded a jeweler, you can't fund another. So decide whether you want the 1 or 2 point slot when you do this. So the next set of changes we're going to look at is actually part of hire an employee. So normally when you hire an employee, you'd go over here and you'd pick one of the cards available and pay an appropriate cost. Now in the expansion, instead of doing this, and remember you still need a master to take this action, you can instead hire your specialized apprentice with a catch. So if you decide to hire your specialized apprentice, the first thing you have to do is meet the requirements in the gray box. And the requirement for this apprentice is that you need to have 3 dresses in master slots. But other apprentices have different requirements. This one requires you to have 30 livres when you hire him. And this one requires you to have 3 jewelry tiles. And we'll look at how you get those in the next section of this gameplay breakdown, which is make a dress. But for now, if you meet this requirement, then you can hire this employee. And you don't pay any money. You simply take the employee and put them into your hand. And then you can play them at any time, and you'll take a main action. And in addition to the main action, you'll get a bonus action, which will be to take 3 points. This means you'll just take 3 points of these tiles here and put them face down in your play area. This apprentice will then be part of your deck forever and can cycle through them, getting 3 points every time. So the final set of changes to the take an action phase are the make a dress changes. So when you make a dress, you can also rent a piece of jewelry to go along with that dress. So you'll start by picking a tile from the make a dress section as normal. You'll still need a journeyman or a master to do it. You'll have to pay the fabric and any lace or yarn as normal. But if you decide to rent it, you can also rent jewelry with it. So in this case, our blue player has decided to make this red dress. So they'll pay the cost, which is a red fabric, a yarn, and a lace, and they've decided to rent it, which means they're going to flip it over and put it into the castle. Now, because they've sponsored a jeweler, they can also rent jewelry with it. If you don't have a token down on this one of these spaces, you cannot rent any jewelry. So they've decided that they're going to rent one of these necklaces. Now, we note here from this iconography here that if you're renting a woman's dress, you must use a necklace, and if you're renting a man's dress, you must use a ring. Let's not talk about any potentially problematic things with this in this instructional video, but I do believe they've made this more diverse in the new artwork for the new eagle-gryphon version of the game. In this case, our blue player decides they're going to rent this necklace here because it's the cheapest, and they'll pay 4 livres, and then what they get to do is when they'll put this down in the castle wherever they want it with their token on it, and they'll just take this necklace and put it into their play area, and this has 2 effects. The first is that it's worth a point at the end of the game. The second is that it's going to give you 1 extra money in the income phase. Well, and the final effect actually is this down here. If the color of the necklace matches the color of the dress, then you get a bonus effect. This means that you don't necessarily have to match the necklace color with the dress color. So our blue player could have played this yellow tile with this red dress because it's a necklace that matches a lady's dress. They could not have taken this blue ring because the blue ring needs to be played with a man's coat. They'd still get to take this tile, but that would be the end of it. However, because they played this red one, which matches the red dress, they also get a free fabric tile. But note that this fabric tile is taken at random from the set of face down ones. So they'll just come over here and take one of these tiles, and then they can look at it and make a decision about whether they want the bottom part or the top part. And if they want the top part, they'll put it face down in their play area. If they want the bottom part, they'll just take the appropriate token from the supply and put that into their play area instead. And of course, if they take the bottom part, the tile is put back in the game box. But if they want the fabric, they'll put it face down in their play area. And then the necklace, of course, goes into their play area as well. And so that's how the jewelry box expansion modifies those 3 actions from the main game. But wait, there's more. There's actually a whole new action as well called Take Exams, which allows you to upgrade your existing employees. So what we've got here is this little examination card. And you've got up along the top a bunch of different actions and a bunch of different thimbles here that match, in this case, the apprentice. But note that this is actually double-sided with an advanced side on the back. And we'll talk about that in a minute. If you ever take an action, the action depicted in the scroll along the top here, and do this relevant thing in the circle here, you get to take one of your little discs, in this case it's the red player, and cover up that space. So if we ever purchase a tile from the market here that matches the fabric in the circle, then we can note that we've done that. In this case, it would have to be with an apprentice. So we'd have to use one of the apprentice cards from our deck to go and buy fabric from the shop, and we could cover up this space. In this case, we'd actually have a choice to either cover up this space or this space, because this is a yellow and a red fabric. But it's only once per action. So we'd go down here and cover this up. If red used this apprentice and bought both of these tiles with their 2 actions, because they've got a bonus purchase fabric action, then red could cover up this space for this tile and this space for this tile. The next one is buy a tile and take the bottom part of the tile. So if red uses an apprentice to purchase this tile and takes the lace, then they can cover up this space as well. Finally, if red uses an apprentice to sponsor a decoration, then they can, for example, if red went down here with an apprentice card, then they can cover up this final space on the card. And this unlocks the bonus action at the bottom. And this bonus action is to train an apprentice. So red might play one of their apprentice cards here, and they would be able to do the bonus action here on the card as well. But for their main action, they would decide to do this exam action here, depicted in the scroll. So they'd pay 5 livres, and then what they would do is they would actually discard this apprentice back to the game box, having taken the bonus action on the card, 2 livres. And note that you do this after that, so you couldn't use these livres to pay for this cost. But this card would go back to the game box, and then the red player would be able to upgrade to a journeyman. So they'd go into this deck here, which is the journeyman deck that we set aside here on the jewelry box board, and they'd actually flip it over and just pick one that they wanted. Let's have this guy. And the rest would just go back face down. And then this guy would be added to their hand, and he's got a bonus dressmaking action. So the red player would put this new journeyman into their hand. They'd also gain 1 prestige point token here, which they could put face down in their play area. And then what they would do is they would clear off all of their property markers here and flip over this card to the other side. And here we see it's basically the exact same thing, but now it's journeyman becoming a master. So in this case, when a journeyman makes a dress, so for example makes a tile like this, we'd cover that up. When they make a coat, for example a tile like this, we'd cover that up. Finally, when we use a master to make any dress, we'd cover that up. And then we could play a journeyman from our hand, maybe even the journeyman we acquired previously, but it could be any journeyman, and we could take the journeyman to master exam, which is the exact same thing. We'd pay 5 livres. We can do this bonus action on the card before we get rid of it, removing it from the game. And then we go into the master deck from the jewelry box board. We pick out a master that we want, and you'll note that there's some endgame scoring masters in here as well. And once we've decided on the master we want, this one's endgame scoring 3 points for every 2 apprentices in your deck. We'll add that directly to our hand. We'll get a point as well, and then we'll put that in the red player's hand. This deck goes back onto the jewelry box board. Get another point token to put into your play area, and then what happens is you collect your property markers back up, and you actually flip this back over to the other side. And you can do it again if you want, you know, starting with the apprentices again. So you can continue to take exams and upgrade the characters in your deck as much as you want. And so that's actually it for the extra actions that come in Jewelry Box. And the only way it affects endgame scoring, as I said, is with these jewelry tiles. They add 1 point per tile to endgame scoring, and they also affect your income. That's the other phase that's affected by this. So now, in addition to the fountain income, you get your 5 basic plus 1 for every tile you've got as well. And that's it actually for Jewelry Box. That's everything in the Jewelry Box. I will be back tomorrow to play through all of this Rococo stuff with Michael and with Chris. So we'll be doing the main box and the Jewelry Box. And hopefully this will give you some insight into whether or not you want to buy the new copy from Eagle-Gryphon Games. But thanks so much for watching this video, and if you found this helpful, tell a friend about it, like the video, leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel. That would all be great. I would love it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, everyone.